Okay. I miscalculated how much time it would take to go over the index proxy, so to make it up to you, I'll add a little extra to the end of the next guest group. What that is, well, keep watching if you want to find out. Next we have the Liu Association Section 1. Last time we checked on the southern branch of this Fixer Association, they were fighting the crying children. The distortion that used to be Philip, a grade 5 fixer formerly of the Dawn Office. They almost succeeded in capturing him. But Argalia, the Blue Reverberation, intervened, along with Oswald, the deranged entertainer of the 8 o'clock circus, and Pluto, yesterday's promise. One who made deals that, in the end, would go about as badly for the one who agreed to it as the Battle of Thermopylae, after the Persians were directed towards the Ghost Path. Then Lowell of Section 2, along with Cecil and May, entered the library and got turned into the books, making Zhao a widow. First we have Chun. This long-haired guy is one of Zhao's subordinates. He knew that the nest of Elcorb was a war zone, with all associations, syndicates and fixers fighting each other. Although I suspect that with the associations and fixers, most won't be prone to infighting, at least compared to the less law-abiding part of society, which wasn't helped by the distortion making things worse. He understands that the Index, Arcorp, and the Blue Reverberations group were around, while Arcorp was there under the employ of another wing, making them more reliable. Just as the Liu Association was, the Index were, of course, guided by the prescripts, which, as we covered earlier, wipes the fun from the nest. He also revealed that even the subsidiaries in that nest were wiped out. The subsidiaries of the Liu Association. So, yeah, I can understand why subsidiaries from at least neighbouring districts would tend to avoid jobs from District 12. As for the no-name fixers, they see the crucial element that can make or break a battle, as far as a leader of the Liu Association is concerned, is vigour, rather than competence or the strength of individuals, where it can make quite a difference in battle. The leader that makes good choices as far as fixers are concerned, well, it helps to put vigour in them. Even though strength and skill, they're both useful for the higher sections. The fixers still need to be on the same page as their leader as far as combat style is concerned, while Section 2 has careful and level-headed fixers. Section 1 uses a different kind of strategy, using sheer power to fight battles. The story picks up outside the operation camp of Liu Association Section 1 within Elcorp's nest. Miris complained about himself tiring. Chun questioned what the Blue Reverberation was up to. Miris was worried more about how they'll explain what happened to the Liu Association in their reports. likely referring to what happened with the crying children. Miris just told Chun that all they could do was describe what they saw. They couldn't do anything about that now. Chun then asked what happened to Section 2 since they went into the library. Miris believed that they were busy, which likely worried Director Xiao. Besides, they have their own problems. They needed to tie up some loose ends. They then headed back inside the operation camp itself. Chun found Xiao and pardoned the late-night intrusion. They had a number of issues regarding the cases of the distortion that they've recently taken care of. Miris noted that Xiao was strangely silent. She was distracted for a moment, likely due to finding out what happened to Lowell. She then wanted the report, which Chun started by stating that a number of experts have been extracting samples from the captured distortions after failing to secure the crying children. These samples were sent to VCorp. I'm suspecting that VCorp has a singularity that has something to do with biology. Otherwise, why would they want biological samples? Well, Miris mentioned that it would take a full day for this to happen and asked if they were standing by in the meantime. Chun was asking for any word from the president of the Liu Association or the executive board. It turned out that they told Section 1 to stay clear of this matter. This was due to Ruina Association taking over matters regarding the library and the distortion, after monitoring the situation for a little longer. Yeah, the situation is that bad if the Fixer Association, in charge of all the others, is taking over. Miris noted that they were taking their time carrying out a thorough analysis and review of the library, now that it's a serious enough star of the city. Chun asked if they were going to pull out of the nest. Zhao said yes. As soon as the extraction of the biological material of the distortions is done, that's when they'll pull out. Well, it's best not to leave a job half finished. She advised them to pack their belongings in advance, while resting to get them back to full strength for what's to follow. They both understood. Zhao then told them that they'll most likely be in the outskirts, and we know what's there, don't we? Although, what we didn't know was that the ring and the pinky, two of the other fingers, were fighting there fiercely. Yeah, the Liu Association was given the detail. The pinky was apparently considered the most dangerous of the two, advising caution. Chun understood. Zhao then told Miris that overconfidence was his biggest flaw, that he should be mindful of that to minimize hardship in future battles. She also believed that Chun was potential color material. Zhao, I could say the same about you. Chun asked why she was telling them this. Miris was worried that there's other news from their superiors. Zhao assured them that it wasn't. She received the invitation in the middle of her desk, where she'd have to be blind or have non-functioning artificial eyes to miss it. Well, that explains why she was distracted earlier. She knew that Loa was dead, and that one of the books on offer was his. Chun figured out that much, although he didn't say it exactly like that. Although Zhao understood that he figured that out. And effective immediately, she's resigning from her position, much to the surprise of Miris and Chun. She would take all responsibility for breach of contracts and her resignation. Yes, the responsibility for her actions would be her own, not theirs. Miris couldn't believe what he was hearing, asking what she meant. Well, she meant that their careers wouldn't be affected by her actions. But this wasn't what Miris meant. In fact, she even prepared documents about how to transfer her position to someone else, as there was no time to return to Liu Association HQ at that time. She apologized for abandoning her position. And then Chun guessed that she was heading to the library, noting that this deviated from her typical behavior. To make such a hasty decision on this. He suggested that they go back to Association HQ, gather more intel, as there has to be some useful info. Zhao agreed that she was acting in a way that wasn't like her. She was tearful and cried for the first time in her life. This was due to Lowell. She remembered his earnest request to not throw their lives away, no matter what happens to each other. She thought that she could remain cold. She couldn't, as the loss happened, and she couldn't get over it, and she was ashamed by her cold behavior. She felt anger, heartbreak, despair, sorrow. Personal loss is what I'd call this. Zhao was unable to describe what she was feeling. Well, other than it wasn't a pleasant feeling, regardless of what it was. One thing that she knows for sure, she's seen more lies and falsehoods as she climbed up the ranks, which, in our society, would be considered the worst kind of moral bankruptcy ever to exist. But there, it's as common as self-flagellation within uber-religious communities when dealing with impure thoughts. She sees that everything in that city was deceit packaged as truth. Yeah, propaganda is a common practice, isn't it? Well, she says this because her life was full of lies. Yeah, sounds more like nicely packaged. Well, that still contains. Her feelings towards Lowell, in her heart, were true. This was something that Chun understood, but he didn't comprehend how she came to the decision of stepping down from her position, as that has a number of unfavourable consequences. Breaking an association's trust would exclude her from the business in one way or another, even if she opens up an office later. Oh, so she'll be in a similar position to Roland, minus the self-destructive and nihilistic mindset. He was about to go on about how her path would end, when Xiao told him that she gets the idea. But has there ever been a time when she was so worried sick? When her heart was aching from parting from her husband? When she wailed, pining for Lowell dearly, one who helped her realize that her heart was sincere, where she willingly surrendered herself to the flame of passion for him, to prove that there's a meaning to her life. She said this proudly, although Chun was confused why she would. Miris then asked, should she get Loa's book, then what? Does she have any plans for after that? She doesn't. She has nothing to lose that matters to her. All that mattered to her was his book, and fulfilling the will of her heart. Miris then spoke of how others would look at her acting emotionally in situations like that. It would trash her reputation, and thus there would be no place to return, asking if she truly wants that. Xiao considered stars rising in the sky as meaningless without a companion to watch them with. They wouldn't change her mind. Chun decided to follow her. Xiao expected that she wouldn't be able to stop them, so she didn't try. She'd have a better chance to get his book with others. Chun noted her selfishness, as there's a difference between how she acted previously and how she acted now. She left the decision to accompany her up to them, but she would be eternally grateful if they did decide to come with her. Chun and Miris, the latter, surprisingly, decided to accompany her. Upon watching this, Roland was confused by what he just watched. Angela considered that Roland wasn't entirely correct about fixers, as even Zhao could make an emotional judgment. Roland was about as shocked as Angela was, as Zhao was the last person that he expected to act like this. Oh, so you've definitely met her. He believed that it might have something to do with the light that shone during the white nights and dark days, which did more than make distortions and manifest EGO. It made all of the guests that they've watched so far more honest with themselves than they've been previously. Angela agreed with that, as what they've just seen was evidence of that. She also understood Zhao to a degree, as if something were to happen to Roland, she'd also... Whoa there! Are you implying that you want to get closer to Roland? Now, I know you're nearing completion when it comes to becoming human, but... Roland was surprised by that statement, implying that he suspects that she's in love with him? Thankfully, that wasn't the case. At least she claimed it to be not the case. Her sentiment wasn't love. Roland understood that it was more to do with it being tough to find another that she can have an honest conversation with. Angela confirmed this. Upon arrival, Miris noted that they came to the library in the end, and Chun could picture the Seven Branch leader being furious, shouting at them, grilling them due to their rash actions. Zhao apologized for this. Miris made it clear that the choice was theirs and they should focus on what they came there for. Chun noted that their deviation might be overlooked if good enough results were produced. Zhao was fine with dying there, although she cautions them on throwing their own lives away. Yeah, it's a bit late for that, and it's a bit embarrassing. Chun admitted that she was brazen, and he didn't want to die. Well, he didn't want any of them to die if they could help it. Miris hoped that she would get them new jobs to support themselves if they got kicked out of the Liu Association. If their section, well, their branch leader was not so forgiving. They had her word that she would. Then Angela appeared to greet them. While Zhao wasn't in the mood to greet her back, she couldn't ignore her manners. All of those present greeted her. Miris asked, "Why the hesitation? Is she feeling guilty for what she's done after everything?" Angela told them that they know what happened to the others that came before them. Zhao was aware. Yet according to Angela, they've made that choice without orders or coercion. Miris warned her to watch what she said. Chun said that she was talking like they're destined to die. Well, you're not wrong, Chun. Zhao then asked what her point was. Angela was simply curious about the psychology of humans, where she knows about as much as a bigot would when trying to understand other people's positions. She also wanted to understand why she was trying to earn the Book of Lowell back, in spite of immediate danger. It looked like she was looking for substitutes. It's not the first time she's seen that. She can't understand how she can value the goal more than her own life. Zhao asks Angela if she's able to find a replacement for Lowell. She could if she tried, which was what Angela was implying. Angela confirmed this. She was implying this so Zhao didn't need to throw her life away. This annoyed Zhao, seeing that the machine wouldn't understand. The feeling of burning blood coursing through her veins because of something that she cherished. She desired to have it back by any means, in any form. Precious is not the word to speak lightly. Dreams, hopes, ideals, all words that motivated humans to get out of bed in the morning. It also makes life worth living. The meanings are too grand for description, but it's also simple at the same time. Angela still didn't comprehend why she'd risk her own life. She presumed that others would pretend that loss was easily overcame, while it was precious in different ways. Angela then asked why she had such pride, such ungrounded confidence that she's stronger. Was it blind anger? Zhao would like to know the reason as well, but she wasn't feeling wrath or sorrow. Angela criticized her talking big, where risking her life gave her life meaning. That she could act confident because she thought she was firm and sturdy, but would that last if she encountered an unexpected situation? Angela believed that she'd be the first to break down, her faint hope becoming pointless in the face of death. What would her trifling response change? Chen asked if this was a warning to turn back. Angela had neither the power nor right to stop them. Miris was becoming irritated with her now, feeling that she was looking down on them. He wanted them to get on with it. Zhao then became more passionate, telling Angela that she had the hope to find Lowell's book there. She might think of herself as firm, but she couldn't stop others from thinking that she's petty. That she's also free to think of her as a pathetic human being. Nor does she care what others think of her. As for her resolve, what would that change? Not a lot. Hope wouldn't always be bright, as it would not be much different to despair. It'd feel like being lost in the dark, not knowing what to do or where to go. It's not about a path or brightening the way, but there is a difference. It's about what she must do at that time, taking action to make the seemingly impossible happen. That's what hope can allow. She wouldn't let Angela's words break her. She would not yield. Pu fu chen zhao. Which means that she has nothing for her to go back to, which increased her motivation to fight. Now this has origins with a Chinese general ordering his troops to destroy the encampments and their ships in order to increase their motivation to fight for their very survival. Zhao told her to let them enter if she and her librarians were not afraid of them. Angela did so. While Section 1 put up more of a fight than Section 2, Chun unfortunately fell in battle, and Miris dragged Zhao away against her desires. She was also changing into something. Roland found that form oddly reminiscent, similar to how Philip manifested a partial EGO. Angela couldn't tell if it was that or distortion. But according to Roland, they didn't get a good look at Zhao. The reason eluded Angela. Why Miris dragged Zhao away. Roland wasn't expecting him to care for his boss. Well, for a boss, that much. As this was the first time that someone dragged another away so that both could live. He understood that she wanted to fight to the death. As for whether or not she comes back, well, she appeared to have a horn and snake scales, as if she was turning into an eastern dragon. But this transitional phase would be seen soon enough, if not seen in a complete form, as Zhao and Miris's part in the story was not over yet. In fact, it would eventually get quite interesting. Just not right now. Next we have The Servant of Wrath. This is another that originated from the Wonderlab comic. This small green-clad depiction of justice, well, she even had the blindfold, used to be the magical girl of courage. Yeah, that's right. There's more than 3 examples of anime come to life in this series. She valued two things above all: justice and balance. If she didn't have justice and temperance works done, presumably, she'd lose control over herself. As for how she started, she met the hermit of the Azure Forest, who became friends with each other. She told every secret about her world to this hermit. The problem was, the hermit was an enemy of the magical girl's world, and so betrayed her by destroying her world. This resulted in this magical girl being consumed by rage, seeking to destroy the one that betrayed her. There are some parallels between the magical girl of courage and Michelle, as both have had some kind of betrayal, which led to some kind of destruction. The main difference being that, in Michelle's case, she was an informant who led Garion, Arbiter of the Head, to destroy the lab in the outskirts. And what she felt after that, due to finding out that she had caused so much death due to her informing on her employer, due to, well, what was going on in that lab. It wasn't rage. It was guilt. Guilt that consumed her so much that she killed herself. Yeah, there are some parallels between them, but some differences. As for what she was, she's either an abnormality from another world, where she and the others came out of either the same tear or a similar tear to the free birds of the Black Forest, or they used to be humans that couldn't handle reality and took LARPing or cosplaying way too far. As for how the Servant of Wrath was introduced in Wonderlab, it involved the King of Greed, the Queen of Hatred, and the Knight of Despair, all breaching at once, while the Servant of Wrath was held in branch O-5681, while the other three were in the large branches. Whether or not they're in the facility, that's up to the player. They were apparently praying for something. As for the Servant of Wrath, they were attacking other branches, either because they were looking for the Servant of Wrath, or they were, well, prevented from doing their ritual due to something. Well, regardless, they were either suppressed and returned to their branches, or they were transferred to the facility that we're more familiar with. In that branch, in branch O-5681, it apparently appeared to be the case that she was prevented from breaching when an employee made a friend of her. They used each other, which included toxic sludge generation to help suppress abnormalities, which also kept, well, at least helped to keep that abnormality from breaching. Yeah, she has helped out against many breaching abnormalities. She seems to attach to a friend, although if she either fights too many abnormalities or is worked on too much by the same employee, she loses control. Yeah, she's conflicted about being fair, as in just and balance, where she has to treat everyone equally, and the concept of friendship, which if she loses control while this employee is working on her, she consumes that employee and transforms into a reptilian mini kaiju that's bipedal and has toxic sludge coated hammers for hands. So, a mix of the lizard, She-Hulk, and a gender-bent pre-Midgard Kratos. She saw balance crumbling, justice vanishing. This dissolved the border between worlds. The toxic sludge turned low-level agents into headless mannequins called staves. She sought out the sinners of the other worlds, embodiments of evil. It was also revealed that the hermit of the Azure Forest appeared. Both were hostile to the agents there, and they hit quite hard, even when the agents were aided by the power of EGO. Upon the servant defeating the hermit, the servant of Wrath changed back, and was returned to her containment units. I'll see about giving the full story breakdown of Wonderlab in its own section, as there are some interactions between the employees within this that I don't want to cover here. As for her behavior, well, as a mini kaiju, she saw all as sinners and embodiments of evil. She sought to uphold justice and balance through wholesale destruction of any that stand in the way. As for the staves of the hermits, they needed to be destroyed to make things easier. These headless mannequins were just capable of grunting and screaming, although it's unclear how they were able to do that. As for the hermit of the Azure Forest, who spoke of her beloved in an almost mocking tone, as her speech said one thing, but she was the one who brought destruction to the world of the magical girls. This hermit visited from another world, where she met the servant of Wrath. Yeah. The servant of Wrath told the librarians to get out of the way, as the final blow was hers. Once the staves were gone, the servant of Wrath and the hermit could face each other. The servant of Wrath had it rubbed into her that she was defeated by her beloved companion. Well, with a friend like that, I'd hate to think what the enemies are like. As for what Tippereth had to say about this, she wanted to figure out why the servant of Wrath was, consumed by Wrath, hoping that it'd make things easier to deal with regarding this abnormality. She found her way of upholding balance questionable upon defeating her. As for her assistants, They questioned why they should kill wooden puppets, and even questioned what they saw. Hang on a minute. Did you not see the puppets of Ji-hyun, the puppeteer? I can understand you not recognizing Pinocchio, as that was in the general works floor. But the puppets made from first-class warp train passengers... Well, they noticed that the servant of Wrath was looking for something. Likely the other 3 magical girls. Upon the defeat of the hostiles that massacred, they were reminded of the other 3 magical girls, believing that all of them were nuts, and asking what caused the servant of Wrath to be that furious. Upon returning... Sorry. Still can't get over that. Upon returning to her humanoid form, the servant of Wrath asked if they were true friends. The servant of Wrath's stage is another cityscape, one that's foggy. There are buildings in the background, and a crossroad is where the fighting is at. There are acidic sludge patches. Well, that's one way of describing it. There's certainly acidic sludge on the 4 corners. Yeah, this is another fight where the librarians had to let the abnormality take down the primary target. Damage can be caused, but the servant of Wrath had to deal the finishing blow, which isn't helped by the erosion inflicting mass attack that the servant of Wrath can inflict. Erosion being the effect of the acidic sludge, which attacks both body and mind. After Teperev and her assistant librarians prevailed against this, what's to follow? Well, that'll have to wait until the next lore video. Oh yes, about that ritual that the magical girls were involved in. I'll be covering that in the next floor realization. The floor realization of the natural science floor. Until next time, hail the rabbit!